like to gavel in our regularly scheduled meeting for August 18, 2014. If you would all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start, we get into the meeting, I did want to make just a couple comments real quickly. I'm going to respectfully ask the Board of Aldermen not to make any comments with respect to the issues that have been happening up in Ferguson this past week. I truly feel it is inappropriate for elected officials, specifically leaders of our community, who are making judgment without having the facts. And I would also ask the audience that this not be a topic of conversation at the Board of Aldermen meeting here tonight. But I would also like to ask if we could have a moment of silence for all those concerned. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Alderman Harper.
Here.
Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Robertson.
Here.
Alderman Kramer.
Present.
Alderman Tui.
Here.
Alderman Leahy.
Here.
Alderwoman Bannister.
Here.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Here.
Thank you. Next item, approval of the agenda for the regular Board of Aldermen meeting for August 18, 2014. Alderwoman Saunders.
I just have a question. Andy, is your bill on here? Because your bill, you wanted an ordinance to put it for election, though. That bill modifies our code. It doesn't. Your bill was to have an ordinance authorizing us to put it on the ballot.
Bill 5896 is what is coming to the board at this time.
Okay, you didn't want it in that format?
We'll address that when we get to this bill.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Your Honor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item, consideration and approval of the minutes from the regular Board of Aldermen meeting from July 21st, 2014. Motion, please.
So moved, Your Honor.
And second?
Second.
Second, Your Honor.
Motion was made by Alderman Kramer, second by Alderman Leahy to approve the minutes as submitted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Actually, I had one change for the agenda. Could I have a motion to move item 11G, the Excise Commissioner's report, up to item 5C under presentations and recognition?
So moved.
Second, Your Honor.
Your Honor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? See, I was paying attention, George.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Next item, we do have happy to be swearing in one of our newest officer. So if Jeff, if you could please come forward. Jeff, if you would please raise your right hand. I, Jeff Presson,
I, Jeff Presson,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Missouri,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Missouri,
and the ordinances of the City of Brentwood,
and the ordinances of the City of Brentwood.
that I will faithfully demean myself
I will faithfully demean myself
in the office of police officer,
in the office of police officer,
for which I was appointed
for which I was appointed
28th of July, 2014.
28th of July, 2014.
Congratulations.
Jeff comes to us from Rock Hill. He was recently a Rock Hill police officer. He is 26 years old.
Baby.
That means there's now 6 police officers on our department that were born after I started working. I love that. Jeff has a bachelor's degree from Missouri State. Just came from Rock Hill PD, and we're very happy to have him here.
Great. Thanks, Dan. All right. And you're next as well, Dan.
Knew that. On June 8th, at 12:20 in the morning, we received a call for a robbery in the 8900 block of North Swan in Brentwood Forest. A gentleman had come home from shopping at Schnucks, got out of his car with groceries in his hand, and had two men walk up to him and tell him to take a step back and empty his pockets. They took his keys, they took his belongings, they took his car, and they left. They were also armed with a handgun. That was at 12:20 a.m. At 1 o'clock that afternoon, Sunday afternoon, St. Louis City recovered the car, and it was towed to our police department for processing. Two of our officers, Dave Pauk and Paul Clayton, were given the task of fingerprinting the car. And just think about that. It's, think fingerprinting a window or fingerprinting something smaller, but fingerprinting a car takes some time, and you have to be very meticulous about it, which they were. They were able to pull off several different prints. We were able to get prints from the owner of the car, and then we sent all those prints in. The next day, St. Louis County came back with 2 hits on the prints. We found out who those prints belonged to. We put wanteds out for those subjects, and on June 12th of that same week, they were arrested. Both of them gave full confessions, not only to our robbery, but to 2 other armed robberies, the 2 previous nights in St. Louis City and in University City. These were 2 19-year-old kids who, as far as we figured, were just going to keep doing it till somebody picked them up. What I love about this is that we would never have found out anything about this except for those prints. And that's good old-fashioned police work. And what Dave and Paul did that day was take a little extra time and use a little extra effort. And it helped get 2 really serious criminals off the street. So what I would like to do is present both of them what we call a certificate of excellence to Officer Dave Pauk and to Officer Paul Clayton, if they would step forward.
Great job, guys.
Thanks, Dan, and congratulations. Next item, we do not have any public, oh, I'm sorry, George. Excise Commissioner.
Well, I must tell you, that's a tough act to follow. We have 2 requests from Immersed by Atlas for a temporary liquor license. The first one is to be held on September the 3rd from 6:30 to 8:30, and the second one is to be held on September the 11th from 5 to 8. They'll be serving cocktails, beer, and wine. You want to approve that one, or should I do a St. Mary Magdalene also?
Haven't they had other ones?
Oh, they're having them all the time, and we never get invited.
I know, well, it's one issue, George, but the second one, is there do we have a limit on the amount of temporary liquor licenses?
I don't think so.
Okay, just curious. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve both applications as submitted.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is St. Mary Magdalene, and I'm happy to say that they've got their act together for the balance of this year and through next year, 2015. Anyway, the first one is for the fish fries to be held February the 20th, 27th, March the 6th, March the 13th, March the 20th, the 27th, and April the 3rd. The second one is for a St. Mary Magdalene Athletic Trivia Night to be held on 9/13 of this year. That's from 6:30 to 11. That will be beer and wine only. And then the other one is another trivia night. No, I'm sorry, it's the auction, which will be held on April the 15th in the gym.
April the 11th.
I'm sorry, April the 11th.
That's not what's on the application.
They don't have it on the application. So it is November the 11th, Kathy? 8th? Okay, it's November the 8th, but it wasn't on here.
Okay.
Is that this year then, 14?
Yeah, that'll be this year.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay. So everybody understand that? Do you have a motion to approve the temporary liquor licenses for St. Mary Magdalene?
Your Honor, make the motion to approve all three.
Second?
Second, as amended.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Thanks, George. No public hearings this evening. Bids, we have 3 this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. The first one is emergency purchase of disc-to-disc backup system. Staff request an information technology emergency capital purchase. The D2D disc was budgeted for this year. However, because we've been focused on more of the transition work to East Central Dispatch, we focused on that. We expected that this D2disc would reach the end of its life expectancy this year, and unfortunately, or fortunately, it has been sending Robin email messages that it is nearing that point. So before we actually have a complete hardware failure, we would like to go ahead and replace this item. There's money in the budget. There will be no additional cost to this line item. This will be purchased off the state contract. And you will see it on the warrant list, so you will get to approve it then. The estimated cost is $11,949.84. This was presented to Ways and Means last week at the committee. They recommended its approval and asked that it be forwarded to the board.
Did you say it was already in the budget for this year?
Yes. But we were going to purchase it as part of the refresh program where we were purchasing a number of other IT equipment at that time. So we're now pulling it out and purchasing it separately.
Okay. But if it was in the budget as a line item, right?
It wasn't a line item.
Okay.
It was
All right.
bundled with other items.
Okay, thank you. All right.
The second item, we went out to bid for the asphalt project. Bids were received for mill and overlay of Brentwood Lane, Manderley Drive, Helen Avenue, and Park Ridge. The low bid was submitted by MB West. We received a total of 6 submittals from different vendors, namely, their names here, MB West Contracting, Special Construction Services, Pride Master Inc., E. Meyer Contracting, Gershenson Construction, and Ford Asphalt. We budgeted $209,000 in the budget, and the low bid and best was submitted by MB West Contracting in the amount of $175,911.44. This was also taken to the Public Works Committee. They recommend its approval and that it be presented to the board.
Okay.
The third item is the professional services for Brentwood Recreation Complex renovation. The city issued a request for qualification for the purpose of retaining a qualified firm to provide architectural, structural, civil, survey, landscaping, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, and fire protection services for the selected maintenance upgrades and improvement to the existing recreational complex. We received a total of 9 responses to the RFQ. There were a selection committee made up of myself, Justin Wise, Chief Jury, Jim Nommensen, Eric Grunfelder, and Ben Von Hartz. We interviewed 4 firms, namely Chiodini Associates, GBA, Jacobs Engineering Group, and William Tao and Associates. The criteria in which the 4 were scored was based on the general company qualifications, related project experience, project design team, project design schedule, approach, and design. The recommendation to the board tonight is the selection of Chiodini Associates, and they are here to make a presentation. Also, I would like Eric to come up and talk a little bit about the selection criteria in which they were selected.
We'll do that at the ordinance.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
when we get to that part. Okay. All right. Thank you. Next item is item 8, hearing of any matters of public interest upon request of any person present. If anybody would like to address the board, please come forward and give us your name and address.
Thank you. David Dimmitt, 9104 Pine. I appear tonight to address the board on the issue of the status of the comprehensive plan. I think it's important to, well, first, by way of background, I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission and have been for a number of years. Within the last few months, we have submitted to the board our recommendation that we start making some changes, or at least look at changing and amending the comprehensive plan. In doing so, what has come to our attention is that some people have some issues and some questions about how we want to do this and what we want to do. So the thought is, why doesn't somebody show up in front of you and maybe give you in a nutshell what our strategy is? And I hope to do that in the 2 minutes that I have. And I usually am fairly brief. Just by way of background, I'm sure you all are aware of this, but maybe some of the people in the audience are not. The plan, I'm going to refer to it as a plan instead of getting tongue-tied, and the comprehensive plan was enacted in '06. I don't think there's been any major renovations, revisions, or amendments to it since 2006. There have been, as you know, a lot of changes, though, in our circumstances that might warrant the need to revisit that plan and address it and maybe amend it or scrap it altogether. The least of which was the recession in 2008 and the resulting problems with the real estate market. So as we see it, this is under our purview. It's our exclusive jurisdiction, the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's our understanding, my understanding, that we are to review this plan as necessary. I don't see anything in the code that mandates or requires us to do it on an annual basis. In fact, the only the only ordinance I could find was the 2538, which states that the commission shall have the following powers and duties, and that is Section 6, to review and update as necessary the city's comprehensive plan. And I would imagine at this point in time, the commission has deemed that it's necessary to look into amending it. That's why we brought it to you. That's why we made that recommendation. The problem is we're not sure exactly what needs to be done. As you know, the plan is fairly large, and at the end of the plan itself, there is a summary that sets out 8 pages of strategies or goals, beginning on page 66. Now, on those 8 pages are 77 different goals and strategies that are contained in the plan. For us as a committee to look at that and to say which of those 77 have been satisfied, which ones are still valid, which ones are moot, is a tremendous undertaking on the committee's part. We discussed that, and so the thought was, why don't we have somebody who is an expert take a look at our plan as it exists right now and review those strategies, those goals, see which one of those have been met and which ones have not, and which ones maybe are moot. So, out of planning and zoning, we said, let's recommend the retention of a consultant for that very limited purpose, to look at our plan and report back to us and say, look, here are some things that you can do, here's some things you need to do, or, this plan is so bad, and bad I mean outdated, that you need to scrap and start all over. I think of the analogy of a car that has 150,000 miles on it and you need a transmission. Do you want to sink $3,000 into it, or you're better off just buying a whole new car? I don't want to make that determination, and I'm speaking on behalf of the committee. Nobody there wants to make that determination. So let's hire somebody let them come back and give us their opinion. That's all it is an opinion. We're not bound by what they say, but we would certainly consider that person's opinion in the next step to take. So that's why we brought it to you. That was the game plan. We're not trying to keep anybody, silence anybody, or to keep anybody, or hearing anybody's opinion on it. It's simply bring us up to speed as to where we are and what you think we need to do. Hopefully we can get that done.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sebbing, and I have some more pictures to share with you of places around Brentwood that I think we can do better than what we have been doing. Thank you.
Yeah.
I got all these packets.
You'll notice the first three pictures are pictures of the sidewalk, or what should be a sidewalk along Manchester. You can see that you can't even see the sidewalk. Tonight, as I was passing this, I pass it pretty much every day. A young man, a teenager, was riding a bike. He had to go into the street. I had to move over to the center lane to avoid hitting him. This is not safe. This didn't happen overnight, and it needs to get fixed. And I don't, you can say it's the counties or whatever, but it's our kids and our and residents who are riding along these and walking along this walkway and running. It's not safe. Somebody's going to get hurt. If you look at the second picture, this is what we call the swales along Manchester. It's not a swale. You step off, there's a 4-inch drop into the curb. Again, within that same 2-block area where I live and pass every day. Right down from St. Mary Magdalene Church. The next one's right in front of lawn care. You can't really see how deep that hole is. It's 6 inches deep. When a car pulls over that, backs out of the lawn care, it's going to pop a tire. Somebody's going to step off and because you can't see how deep that is. They're going to twist an ankle. The next picture, the fourth one, is along Litzinger. That you can tell that weed is 3.5 feet almost tall because that sign's at least 6-7 feet tall. That didn't happen overnight. I don't know why people don't see this and can't clean that up. I mean, you can put some pesticide or something down to kill that, or herbicide, whatever. But that's just common things. I see that every day when I drive by to go to my in-laws. The next one is around the corner, same corner, 2-foot weed coming out of the sewer. And I know they're working on Litzinger, but why is it getting this bad? The next one is a picture when you're coming west from McKnight and going down towards high school along Litzinger. It's a sign that says, entering city of Brentwood, speed limit 25. Please drive slowly, we love our children. You can't see it, but there's a walkway on the side. We love our children, but yet we can't clear the walkway so they can walk on the walkway instead of the street, right across from the grade school. Next one's a picture of a tree. It's along White. Mr. Mayor, you said at the last mayoral meeting that we have to hire a horticulturist from outside the city to approve dead trees because, we don't want to be the big bad city. I don't think you need a horticulturist to tell you that tree's dead. Same as the next one, which is in the apartment complex behind St. Mary Magdalene. You can see that tree's dead, and it's been dead a long time. And this is, Frank, this is a picture of your tree. And this is what we get to look at. And you're one of the individuals for the city. I mean, when are we going to start seeing somebody taking care of these instances? These are just simple things. I find this was what I pulled together just going down 3 streets in Brentwood. These were the same streets that I brought to your attention, the speed signs that we had issues with trees covering over them. Why, if I can see this as a resident just driving by, why can't the people that work for the city see these things and take that one extra step? Tonight we honored some police officers for going above and beyond. I think we need to expect the same thing from some of our city employees. I know they're working hard, but maybe they need to work smarter. If they're going down the street cutting branches to take care of the trees to uncover speed signs, why don't they just look at these other things and take care of them as they're going? I mean, if somebody would tell me that this was our city, I'd be like, you know, it looks like a blighted area. We have all this money coming in from all these different businesses, and, you know, we have all the sales tax, but this is the stuff that we live with every day. And I think we can do better than this. I expect that we can do better with this. And I would challenge you, Alderman and Mr. Kelly, that you go out and around the community and you look at some of these areas and you start getting these things done. This is unbelievable that this has gone on for so long. These things didn't happen overnight, but we need to start getting them fixed. Thank you.
Lee Sharp and 08833 Madge. I think they came on Madge and cleared away some branches that were clogging a stop sign, maybe in response, maybe it was one of the pictures that Ms. Sepping had last time, but it was taken care of pretty quick, so, because there's even people yet that come down maybe from Bremerton, and they get a pretty good head of steam going and don't even see the stop sign at Annalee, so somebody saw it and somebody did something, and I want to thank the Public Works Department. I would like to urge you all to pass this 5896, the returning the term of office to 2 years from 4, for a couple of reasons. I think that any organization, any corporation, any city can only benefit by rotation of officers, fresh ideas, new energy, and a 2-year term, two-year terms, if it were me, I'd also put in term limits, but it gives an opportunity for fresh thinking and fresh eyes on some difficult things, and that's usually a good thing. And in addition, there are a lot of people, I think, in Brentwood who might take on the role of governing the city. They might like to offer their talents to its citizens, but this prospect of a 4-year term is daunting. Maybe they get elected. They should be so lucky. And it's not a good fit. So the 2-year terms, I think, would give us the fresh eyes and give maybe some more people an opportunity. So thank you very much.
Julie Pozo, 2211 St. Clair. I just have a few questions. First, I want to thank our policemen for doing such a great job in protecting us. And I had a question, I guess in lieu of everything going on up at Ferguson, and I had heard that a Michaels employee said that the day after, I guess, that running center was broken into, that the employees had to do some training for riot training of some kind. And I was wondering if there's been any discussion as to whether or not we need to hire another police officer. I don't know, we're discussing the budget now. I don't know how they feel, if they're working a lot of overtime now, or I just was curious if that's been a discussion. And then I have, I guess I was at the Ways and Means Committee meeting, and we were discussing Manchester Road and how it's been an eyesore for so many years. And I think Andy Leahy said that we own properties along Manchester Road, and I was just curious what that property was. And you said Luttrell Upholstery?
The Luttrell Upholstery and the Brentwood City Public Works are on Manchester Road.
So I knew the Public Works, but I was just surprised by the Luttrell. Was that donated, or did we purchase it, or how long have we owned it, or was it part of the Strassner TDD? Just kind of curious, because I didn't know we owned that. And then my other question was about, I guess, the sidewalks along Manchester Road. Who owns those? Who's responsible for the curbs and the sidewalks? And is it the businesses? I noticed some of the new businesses that have gone in have new curbs in front of them and some green space. And I moved here with my family, I guess when I was 18 years old, and I don't know how many mayors we've had here, but Manchester has always looked this bad, probably getting worse. And I was just kind of curious why nobody's taken on that job. Are we waiting for a big development, or is it the flood? I mean, is the flood going to wipe out new sidewalks? Or I'm just wondering why it's gone downhill. I mean, it's not your fault. I mean, it's, this has been this way for 30, 40 years, but it just is deteriorating. And I was wondering, you can answer why it's been let go. That's it.
Okay, we'll close public comment. I'll try to address a couple of those issues. Technically, it's my understanding that Manchester Road, including the sidewalks and curbs, are under MoDOT's jurisdiction. We have, over the years, tried a couple of different projects, going back into the 90s with a Manchester Corridor Transportation Development District that was to make improvements from Big Bend and Maplewood out to Geyer and Kirkwood, a 6-mile stretch through all those municipalities. Without getting into the whole history of it, it would have removed the utility poles and lines, new sidewalks, curbs, and gutters was the only thing the funds would have been spent for. Went to the vote of the people, and it was turned down. Last year, we did apply for a grant to make improvements along Manchester Road like we have done in Hanley Industrial Court the last couple years. We did not receive that grant. MoDOT has indicated they were going to move up $1 million that they had available to help facilitate the matching funds for that grant. They weren't able to do that because the funds are, the $1 million they're using were already federal funds, so they couldn't use them for a federal grant. But to make a long story short, there's supposed to be $1 million of improvements that MoDOT was going to do this year along that corridor. I think that's been put on the back burner now too, because of the sales tax or the increase that MoDOT was asking for that was just defeated with the voters. These are planned projects when the funds are available, and they just don't have the money right now. Hopefully they will make those improvements within the next couple of years. Some of those items, the curb I know specifically in front of lawn care equipment, I've already talked to MoDOT about. I don't have time to go around and look at all the curbs in Brentwood, but I did see that one when I was out running. I have notified them about the hole there. But again, the whole corridor, we are working. We've just done another flood study to see what kind of improvements we can do down there to try help with the flooding issue. The primary reason for the lack of investment in that area historically has been because of the flooding. It's hard to get anybody no pun intended, sink a lot of money into those buildings down there when next month they could have a flood that is going to set them back again. And specifically from Mary Avenue to Cecilia, we haven't been able to see that improvement, and the properties haven't turned over that often as well. Usually when a property is sold and somebody comes in for a new occupancy permit, that's when they go through site plan review and go through, trying to add landscaping where possible and those kinds of things. So, all those things together is really the reason Manchester Road is the way it is. We're not waiting for any major redevelopment. One of the goals of the Manchester Road Corridor Study said that if the city were to invest in that area, then maybe that could start some of the improvements. It was one of the reasons that the city bought the Public Works facility down there. We do own the Luttrell building. I think it's in the where Public Works is putting in the budget to have that building tore down this year in the budget. We can't use it for anything. It's just it would need too much improvements in order to utilize it even for storage. So we'll be taking that down and improving that area or that green space where that was. So that's kind of my take on it. If anybody else has any comments on Manchester Road, feel free. So
I just have, when did we purchase the Luttrell, do you know? And was it with city funds?
Yeah, we bought it.
It was pretty
inexpensive. Yeah, it was for sale,
because of the
and
flood.
again, it was adjoining property. It was, I I forget what we paid for it. The owner approached the city because technically the lot couldn't be used. It had to be one of the adjoining property owners to buy it in order to utilize the lot for anything because it's not big enough under our current codes.
So was that reimbursed by the TDD then?
No, we bought that outright.
Okay, I don't remember that. And then also, as far as Manchester Road, you mentioned we applied for the grant last year. That was with East-West Gateway, is that correct, who the grant's for? And will we apply for that again? And
We could, but again, the two projects we're working on this year, we just got the one completed. I don't think that's something the board could decide we could try to do, but that's usually the first of the year that you apply for those.
Right.
I know they come up and all of a sudden we have to get it in gear really quick, it always seems, but do they give us a reason why when they reject the bids or the grants?
They basically say it was a very competitive process. There were submittals by all municipalities, and that's just how it ranked.
Okay. Okay.
And it was one of the, I think if you look at the history, it was one of the larger grant requests as well. And so they like to distribute the money in other places. We had applied for another grant, a much smaller one for the continuation of an existing project we'd already started in Hanley Industrial. We were awarded that. So given the amount of that one and the other project, I think is probably my take on why we wouldn't have gotten to. Alderman Leahy.
Just for the audience's edification, under the current Brentwood code, the sidewalks are actually owned and the responsibility of the property owner. The city has worked on trying to improve sidewalks where city trees have caused uneven shiftings in the pads and stuff to work with. Under the potential new code, that same requirement is still there. The Ways and Means Committee has wrestled with trying to evaluate whether or not the city could take on the responsibility of care and ownership of the sidewalks in the code, and if so, what that financially would do to the city budget. At this point, no decision has been made.
Can I ask a question?
Alderwoman Sanders.
Frank, is that correct? And I have one follow-up with regard. Like, for instance, with Litzinger Road, we're buying these easements and we're paying people for these easements, and then we're putting a sidewalk on their property, but they own the sidewalk? That's how it works when you pay? I know it's access to their property, but if you put it on their property, wouldn't you be liable for it?
That is not always the case. A lot of times it depends upon the nature of the easement. You would actually almost have to do a sidewalk inventory and look at the various easements, see who owns the property, who has easements over it, and who has the responsibility for maintenance of it. I know in the past there have been certain sidewalk easements granted to the city with the express agreement that the city would maintain the sidewalks on that easement. So unless you have a specific stretch of road where you can look at the documents, governing documents, it's hard to give a blanket answer.
Well, the easement documents are supposed to be kept in a file so that you can go open that file and you can go and look at those easements at any time. I believe that's state statute, not our code.
Well, most of those easements, generally speaking, would be recorded at the recorder's office.
Okay.
Or they would appear on a plat
for a subdivision.
For a subdivision that's been platted and recorded.
But in our CAFR, we have them included as a capital asset, and yet in the code, we say that the residents own them. Do you feel comfortable that the residents do own them?
There are some sidewalks that the city owns, I believe. There are sidewalks that are owned by the residents, subject to a right-of-way or an easement. And again, without knowing the specific sidewalk, I can't give you a...
But just one clear, if you get an easement and you put a sidewalk on mine, like for instance these people that we're buying property from, that does not automatically make the city liable for repairing that sidewalk?
Not automatically, but it may.
So that, we need to be doing an additional agreement, they do?
Well, let's get to what the
that's fine.
real issue is here. Regardless of what easements we have and what, the city's policy has always been in the residential neighborhoods. I would check on Manchester Road, who actually owns the sidewalks on Manchester Road. It's been a little bit different down there, I think. But it has been our policy in the residential neighborhood that the city has maintained and repaired sidewalks when needed. A few years ago in Webster, who I think probably has some of the same ordinances we do with respect to these kinds of things, Webster wanted to do sidewalk improvements, so they did an assessment against every one of their residents in order to do it. We've done whole streets of sidewalk. We've done sidewalks in Brentwood Forest. We've done sidewalks, other complete streets throughout Brentwood when they needed it. We did the sidewalk along Litzinger in front of McGrath School. And so it's been something, because the city has been able to do that we've taken on that liability. If you want to research who technically has to do it and change our policy, first I would say that you want to vote to change the policy, then spend the money to do all the research on who actually owns the sidewalks and go and make that decision.
And thank you. At Ways and Means, it was determined that we were going to follow the code.
Well, but that you may want to forward that recommendation to the Board of Aldermen and vote on it, but because Ways and Means can't make their decision without the vote of the Board of Aldermen.
Okay, so we'll put that back on at Ways and Means, on the agenda.
Okay. All right. Next item, we'll close public comment. I already did that, I think. Introduction and reading of bills. Can I have a motion? Are bills number 58, 97, and 8 staying on hold?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion for first and second readings of bills number 5896, 5899, 5900, and 5901?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second, Your Honor.
All in favor, first and second readings only, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. First reading of bill number 5896, please.
First reading bill number 5896 by title only, an ordinance amending Chapter 8 of the Revised Code of Ordinances of the City of Brentwood, Missouri by deleting Section 8-2 in its entirety and enacting in lieu thereof a new Section 8-2 as it relates to election of officers generally, providing for the current maintenance of this code, providing for the effective date of this ordinance, and providing for the repeal of all conflicting ordinances.
Okay. Synopsis, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Bill 5896, the Election of Officers Bill, covers an ordinance amending Chapter 8 of the Revised Code of Ordinances for the City of Brentwood, Missouri. It deletes Section 8-2 in its entirety and enacts in lieu thereof a new Section 8-2 as it relates to the election of officers generally, providing for the current maintenance of the code, providing for the effective date of the ordinance, and for the appeal of all conflicting ordinances. The ordinance would set the general municipal election to be held in each ward on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in April of election year. Furthermore, it changes the term of office for elective officers of the city from 4-year term to 2-year terms, beginning in the year 2015 for the election of mayor, municipal judge, and 1 alderman each from wards 1, 2, 3, and 4. In the year 2016, 1 alderman shall be elected for each from wards 1, 2, 3, and 4. The elective officer shall hold office for a term of 2 years until his or her successor is elected and qualifies.
Okay. Thank you. Alderman Leahy.
Oh, can I just quickly?
Alderwoman Saunders.
I want to determine whether or not I need to abstain from this vote. Based on what I can see from the law, it seems as though this needs to go to the voters. And so I feel like it's a conflict of interest for us to set our terms.
You're not setting your terms, you're saying future elected official terms.
Right. But again, we're setting the terms. And as Alderman Nguyen, I don't know if the vote was 75%. I did not vote for the 4-year terms. I support the 2-year terms. But is this the appropriate way to go about changing these? And I haven't seen any case law or any written, did I miss it?
I have looked at the statutes. The statutes make provision for taking to the voters, raising the term to 4 years. It does not address taking to the voters for the alderman taking any other term other than 4 years. The only authority I can find out there is an Attorney General opinion, which relates to a statute with similar wording as it relates to, I believe, marshals. And their conclusion in that was that in order to roll the terms back it would be an action by the Board of Aldermen to repeal the statute or to repeal the ordinance, but that to take it to the voters would be, in effect, a referendum, which a fourth-class city is not entitled to do.
Yep.
My understanding is that Gina Mitten, is that correct, Andy?
Yes.
Has requested an opinion from the Attorney General on that, on this specific issue, and as of right now has not received a response.
Okay.
And if I can address one other thing, I don't believe you have a conflict in voting
Okay,
for
I just
that.
wanted to clarify that, so thank you.
Alderman Lay.
Thank you, Your Honor. I've passed around to the board members a little bit of history, because I'm going to ask you to do a couple of things in order to follow the city attorney's recommendation, and then I am going to throw a small curve. What I'd like you to do is look at the first page I've given you that I've highlighted in yellow. This is the section in the state statute that is creating the unclear action as to how best to proceed. If you'll read what's in yellow, and I'll do so for the audience, the Board of Aldermen may provide by ordinance that the terms of the Board of Aldermen shall be 4 years. Such ordinance shall be submitted by the board to the voters of the city and shall take effect only upon the approval of a majority of the voters voting at an election at which the issue is submitted. Any person elected to the Board of Aldermen after the passage of such an ordinance shall serve for a term of 4 years and until his successor is elected and qualified. Note that the paragraph does not address how to go backwards. That's the issue that we've been wrestling with the state legislatures for the last 2 years. The bill in front of you is, based on opinion, the best way to proceed by this board deciding that we wish to roll back to a 2-year term. The problem that I have with this is that none of the elected officials have any empirical data that supports whether a 2 or a 3 or a 4-year term is the best for the residents that we serve. We've tried a 4-year term. We're up on the end of 3. We're coming up on the end of 4 next year. So what I would like to do, and Frank, I have not had a chance to talk with Frank about this, so I will allow the city attorney to chime in. I am offering on page 2 an amendment to Bill 5896. If the board would approve the Bill 5896, the ordinance would then move the terms back to 2 years. I like that idea, but that's based on my personal feeling. I do believe that the citizens are served best if they make that decision. So in conformance with state statute, we pass the ordinance to make it a 2-year term and then go back to the voters in the November election to establish whether or not they would like the elected officials to serve 4-year terms. Now I'm allowing the voters to tell us what's right. The original way I wanted to submit this bill to the Board of Aldermen was to request that the voters choose whether they wish to leave it at 4-year terms or return it to 2. Frank and I and Mrs. Mitten and the Attorney General could not find a way that would be convenient and in process to get to there. So if we pass the ordinance to change it to 2, we still can go to the voters and let them decide in this November election, effective for the April 15 vote, whether or not you stay at a 2-year term or if they wish to go to a 4-year term. If we did it this way, we would, the city of Brentwood, be in conformance with state statute. So at this time, I offer the amendment on page 2 of the handout and ask that it be attached to Bill 5896.
Okay, let's be clear. That's your opinion that we've been in conformance with state statute. Now I'll turn it back over to the city attorney.
I don't believe adding that amendment to this ordinance would accomplish that. I think you'd need a separate ordinance with different language specifically to take it to the voters. I think the possibility for confusion would be significant, and you may end up with more uncertainty than that. My suggestion would be is if you think that the board elects to go back to 2 years and you think the voters should vote on it, then address it in a subsequent election.
That's the problem. Unfortunately, this is where I wanted to address this last month. The deadline for submitting a electoral question for the November 2014 election is Friday night, the 22nd of August. So this board, if we wish to put something in front of the voters to hopefully have it resolved prior to anybody filing for an elected office in 2015, we need to do something this evening or this week. Now, I am advised that as an amendment to the standing bill, it would be acceptable by St. Louis County election.
I would not be comfortable adding that language to the existing ordinance.
Well, and I want to be, and Frank, I just want to be clear because, you know, you've already said that under state statute, we can only put things on the ballot that the legislatures allow us to put on the ballot.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
And there isn't anything on there that allows us to go back. It only allows us to set it to 4 years.
To take it to a vote.
Right.
Correct.
To make it 4 years. So either it is a non-binding referendum or it's not, which we're not allowed to do as a fourth-class city. You know, I think instead of being challenged that way and going through an election, and I want to be very clear, I'm 100% behind going to a 2-year term. So I just think the best thing for a city to do, and I haven't heard any residents I've talked to say that they're against it. You know, I think if we want to give the ultimate control to the residents, it's in order you're voting and putting them in office in the shortest time period possible. Again, I mean, you could make it a year, but I mean, 2 years, it gives the residents the ultimate control. And so I think it's appropriate for the board because no ordinance is binding to future boards. I mean, that's state law as well. So, you know, if we decide to change the ordinance and put the 4-year term into place, we can reverse that ordinance and put it back to 2 years for the elected officials. And I don't think anybody's going to challenge us on that, and I would rather have it challenged that way than take it to a vote of the people and being in limbo and being challenged along those ways. It would be a lot more costly. Alderwoman Saunders.
My concern is just that we do it right. Let's get this done right. So have you spoken with the Attorney General? Because since the state statute doesn't address it, I feel like they have an obligation to answer us.
I have not. I believe, Bola, you've talked to Gina Minton.
I have.
And they are reviewing it and currently working on rendering an opinion on it.
They've actually submitted a letter to the Attorney General's office, and they're waiting for a response.
Well, then I suggest we place this bill on hold. We will not meet the election time frame, but also it could be on the April election, so
Well,
there's still time.
If I could say this, if the Attorney General is of the opinion that it is not appropriate for a vote, that it would be a referendum, the board could still take this ordinance up prior to the election. You would be able to take this up again, I guess, as late as October to change the elected.
No, I would think it'd actually be filing.
It's not going to go in effect until the April 2015 election, so why don't we wait, gather the information, wait to hear from Gina Minton and the Attorney General?
You could not put that on, well, let me put it this way. Whatever the board decides to do is fine. I think if we wait, we have until December, till the filing, to change it for anybody that's filing. You can't wait till the April election to have the voters
understand.
approve it, because anybody on the ballot at that point is running for a 4-year term.
Okay, I agree.
So, I mean, that's...
Well, thank you. I didn't think about that, so yeah, that's clarification. So September, can we?
Alderman Kramer?
Yes, Your Honor. I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on this topic. I have had the occasion to speak with esteemed alderman from Ward 3 over there, Alderman on this topic, and a few others over a period of time. And You know, I think that many of us over a period of time have had wishes one way or the other about the way we think this should be, the terms of office, accountability, people should stay, people should go. The one thing that's lost in all of that is the voters have already spoken on this topic. This topic has gone to the voters. If we decide we, on our own free will, as elected officials, try to change and invalidate their wishes, I think that's opposing the democratic process. 5896, the bill itself, I think has language that perhaps parts of it I'm not really opposed to. I think it would be a good idea for the mayor and the board members to have the same amount of years in terms of tenure, and perhaps even the same salary for that matter. Put it all in parity. But it's not up to us, it's up to the voters. And I think they've already spoken. If there's a way for us to put this on the ballot, let them speak again. It's up to them. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Lee.
Okay. Frank, I'll come back to you first. The current proposed ordinance is acceptable in informal conversations that both you and I have had with the AG's office. And they prefer this method over fourth-class city putting it straight to the voters, because paragraph 3 doesn't allow us to do that. The AG's office is not opposed, if I'm back to 2 years, the city following paragraph 3 and putting it to the voters asking if they want to go to 4. Thus, if we take the ordinance that you've drafted per the 2 years that we've been working on this one to get this far, we can get to a 2-year term. My only problem with that is no one here in the elected side has any empirical evidence as to whether a 2-year, 3-year, or 4-year term is what the residents want. Thus, yes, we take the step of putting it to 2 years, which then opens the door to allow us to put it to the voters, to allow us to raise the term to 4, or if they vote no, it stays at the 2. And at least that way, we get it. It is not a referendum anymore, because we are following state statute as defined.
I think that
Just by a show of hands, how many residents would prefer a 2-year term?
That's
Okay. I think that's most of the residents. Okay. Anyway. So, well, let's at least, if I have a motion to put this on hold, and again, we can maybe bring this up in a meeting in September, see if we get opinion back from the Attorney General. I do think it's important that the Attorney General did say that they believe that this is an approach that the city could take by adopting this existing ordinance and just going forward with the 2-year terms, which is the reason that I asked that we move forward with it and bring it to the board last month. So
I'll make the motion to put it on hold.
Okay.
I do, like you, Mayor, I support you in the 2-year terms, but I would just like to hear from the Attorney General and Gina Mitten. I think that would be...
but at some point, we may have to make a decision because they may not do that before December, but that's fine.
exactly.
Oh,
I mean, there's no guarantee that they'll make a decision.
okay, well, let's try
Okay.
to all put pressure on them.
Right. But we can wait, and we have time to wait to see. Okay. Do we have a second to place on hold? Second was made by Alderman Tui. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion.
Opposed.
Thank you, sorry. First reading of Bill Number 5899.
First reading Bill Number 5899 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute a professional service agreement on behalf of the city of Brentwood, Missouri with Chiodini Architects and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Justin? Or Eric, I'm sorry. I was looking at you, I just said the wrong name.
Thank you, Mayor. As we've talked, the department put together an RFQ for the purpose of finding a qualified firm to provide architectural services to do renovations to the community center. As City Administrator Conde mentioned, we did have nine people provide RFQs. We did interview 4. We did have a team of 6 on the selection committee. All 6 selected Chiodini Architects as our number 1 choice. for a number of reasons. One is that they have a wealth of design experience, especially with municipal projects. Chiodini has done things such as a multi-phase renovation, new construction on the City of Columbia government. A very large project undertaking that they did a wonderful job on. They also did design for Firehouse Number 2 in the City of Ladue that they are just wrapping up right now, actually. They've done many projects for WashU and University of Missouri. And if you know those two institutions, if you don't do a very good job with those, you're not welcome back. So that's a good sign. They also have done a master plan for the Afton ice rink, and then also have done designs for the All-American ice rinks. They also had ice rink experience. In addition, we were very impressed by the team that they brought together. They brought KJWW on their team, who has done a number of rink projects, Bowling Green State University, Indiana State Fair Coliseum, Duluth Entertainment Convention Center, just to name a couple. KJWW also did a lot of the mechanical work at the City of Clayton Police Building, a project that I know very well, and they did a wonderful job over there as well. They also brought together, as part of this team, the only one who actually did this, a cost estimator, so that they will be making sure that they understand the cost of the project as we move forward. Design phase, during this whole process, we won't be surprised, hopefully, when we open bids. They are suggesting cost estimating at a conceptual estimate, schematic estimate, design development, 50% construction development, and 75%. So, and their cost estimator has done a wonderful job, again, with many projects. They brought many examples of his work, and he did a good job. And finally, we thought that Chiodini was very sensitive to the overall appearance of the building, that the residents would actually see that their money went somewhere, that they saw some improvements in the overall design, that it wasn't just behind the scenes. So because of that, we felt comfortable recommending Chiodini. Chiodini is here tonight. They wanted to just introduce themselves and talk a little bit about the fees and the overall fee for the project. And with that, I'm going to introduce Chris and Michael Chiodini from Chiodini Architects. And they also have Steve Russ and Russ Arneson from KJWW here as well. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Great, thanks. While you're setting up, I wanted to make one other comment. One thing, David, addressing the comprehensive plan, which is something I think is important to the residents as well. We do have that consultant out to bid right now. Hopefully, we'll bring, if we can get the interviews done, and bring that back to the board in September. Thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm Chris Chiodini with Chiodini Architects, and we appreciate the opportunity, Mayor and Board, to present this to you. Very quickly, an overview of our team. Chiodini has been in business for this is our 40th anniversary. We've actually been in Brentwood at Magna Place for 14 years. Michael and I have cut our hockey teeth at the Brentwood Ice Rink. We finally got to quit freezing at the City of Clayton outdoor rink. Michael's kids have played elite hockey nationally and internationally, so he's very familiar with a lot of the rinks around the country. We've done a lot of work in Clayton, Brentwood Promenade, Brentwood Plaza, and we had proposed the Truman Bank headquarters at the corner of Manchester and Hanley. Unfortunately, not realized. A firm of about 25 professionals. Our main design markets are municipal, governmental, collegiate, healthcare, and retail and religious. The team that we've brought is myself. Michael will be project manager. Oh, thanks. I'll be the director of architecture. I kind of head up the whole team. Michael for Chiodini will head up our portion of the work. Greg Ophoff, director of design. My father, Lou, is president, and Mike Hodges is interior. So we're a full-service architecture and interior design firm. The team we've brought, this shows a little bit of our joint experience. It's a team that has experience in working together. KJWW will have mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection technology, and refrigeration. I think the refrigeration specialist is a key part of this. We're not going to create a criteria to go out to bid and have to try to compare apples to oranges. We will have a specific criteria, helps us establish costs earlier on in the project. We're currently working at the University of Missouri with KJWW on Plaza 900, which is a campus dining facility expansion, the majority of which opens for this fall semester. And we just completed a window replacement for our city of Hazelwood. Advanced Engineering is our civil engineer. Clay Vance is working with Michael at Promenade right now on Great Clips. He's the engineer at the City of Ladue for both sites, Firehouse 1 and 2 for City of Ladue, and the Ladue Commercial Building just west of Heartland Bank and Bomarito Ford up in Hazelwood. J&S Roof Technologies, who will be our roof consultant on this project. We worked with them on close to 1 million square feet of prison re-roofing in Potosi and Pacific, Missouri, and for St. Louis County on Public Works and Department of Highways. And as Eric mentioned, Cooper Construction Estimating is on our team, and he is as well working with us on Plaza 900 and the Federal Reserve Bank lower level north. And I do have some examples of the cost estimate and the detail that we go to, even at the schematic level, that I can hand out, and I believe Eric has copies as well. Quickly with KJWW, again, it's a firm that we've worked with quite a bit, always in the top 100 engineering firms in the country, and their major markets are sports and rec, industrial, commercial, healthcare, education, higher education, and government. And again, the refrigeration specialist is working nationally, and when we had the interview, he's actually up in Alaska doing a rink. Quick overview of our municipal projects, and hopefully what you see here is we do a lot of repeat business for Maryland Heights, Bridgeton, City of Columbia Government Center, as Eric mentioned, was a project that resulted from our recommendation from a mechanical engineer with the city, or with the University of Missouri, for a church project down in Columbia. And a parishioner there was the city manager, and he recommended us for that project, and 12 years later they realized that project. Several projects for St. Louis County as well. This is the Columbia Government Center project. It included the renovation of 3 historic buildings, Howard and Gentry, the Boone Hotel, and the construction of a new 6-story tower for the new government center connecting to the Boone Hotel. Those 3 historic projects received State of Missouri awards. We're currently working, wrapping up the fire station number 2 first for the City of Ladue. We actually did a master plan for them. We looked at their existing stations to see if we could bring those up to essential services criteria and how much that would cost. Compare that to replacing the 2 stations with new stations, as well as a possible consolidation of the 2 stations. And obviously they've resulted in selecting the building of 2 new fire stations on the existing sites. Several projects that we've just wrapped up for Washington University, the renovation of Alderman Hall, the 2nd largest auditorium on the campus. Siegel Hall is the largest, or Steinberg Hall is the largest auditorium on the campus, and currently working on 4th floor Siegel Hall for Department of Media. Steinberg Auditorium, just quickly, it's a folded plate Mackey historical building, triangular ceiling that we're actually working right now to install a fire protection system in that building. Several of the rinks that Eric mentioned that KJWW has worked with, Bowling Green State, Indiana State Fair, Duluth, Moline, and Culver, Indiana. They were also the MEP engineers on the City of Clayton Police Headquarters. And now quickly on to the Brentwood Community Center project. The scope of the work, as we understood it initially from the GBA building assessment, roof replacement, mechanical system replacement, upgrade, new fire sprinkler, fire alarm system, electrical system replacements and upgrade, interior and exterior ADA improvements, and the structural slab replacement and the ice rink refrigeration equipment replacement. And that was established back in March of 2011. It was when that report was conducted, that assessment. Quick condition overview. The equipment's been well maintained by the staff since 1975. However, and they've actually extended its life far past the average expected for the systems. Necessary replacement of systems, roof, HVAC, electrical, and ice rink. They've been delayed, and this delay has actually resulted in increased replacement cost, as reflected in our cost estimate. Further delay in the replacement could increase maintenance costs, as well as there are some of the systems there that parts are not available for. So if they were to fail unexpectedly, we could be looking at increased cost, increased downtime. The roof condition is probably it has a trickle-down effect, literally. A lot of the light fixtures there do not work because of the roof leaks. But one of the things we need to investigate first off is how the insulation, as well as the lightweight concrete deck that's under that insulation, has been impacted by the degrading of the roof system. We're going to look at and address energy efficiency and energy codes, and we're going to look at building codes and ADA code facility compliance. Going to some of the budget numbers, we consider the GBA study level estimate and scope of work kind of a starting point. One of the things that we've discussed and we've looked at is bringing that study estimate up to more of a construction estimate at this time. You see the GBA estimate of 2013 was $2.9 million. You'll see we subtracted $100,000 for a contingency that they had, but it was only a partial contingency. They had a contingency on a lot of the civil ADA work that they were going to perform, but they lacked a contingency on the larger items, HVAC and such. So what we've broken down here, so that brings us to a 2.8 base study level cost estimate. What we've broken down further is 5% plus or minus for cost of inflation for the last 12 months, bringing us to 2014, 7% overhead and profit, 7% general conditions, and at this time, about a 15 to 20% contingency. That brings us to a project study level estimate a little bit closer to a construction estimate of $3.9 million. So we're using the GBA assessment as again, it was the scope of work that we were originally proposed on, and it's our starting point. From this point, we're going to do more detailed evaluations and cost estimates, looking more towards specific systems evaluations, comparing efficiencies, comparing costs of each system, drilling down again, even at the schematic level with narratives on a schematic construction cost estimate. We'll pay attention to constructability, because that's one thing you'll see on the next slide that we felt was that some of the GBA cost estimates were system specific, not essentially how do we get from the mechanical room all the way across the building and what does that impact. And as Eric mentioned, we see an opportunity for improving the aesthetics of the building and showing the community where the money's been spent. This page, and I, of course, sitting here in the room, noticed a typo on this, but I'll get to that one. So if we start with the $3.9 million total project study level estimate 2014, some of the additional scope items that we've seen, and the very first one is interior finish replacement. That number of $50,000 should be $600,000. At about $15 a square foot, 40,000 square feet. For instance, I think the fire protection system is a good example. We can't just put that in the building. There's certain aesthetic considerations. The double T concrete roof system that's there, structural system. If we inserted that, we would have a pipe running down each and every one of those ribs. Is that what we want to do? That's something that we would evaluate at that point. Removing all the ductwork, removing all the ductwork, structural slab replacement. We're talking some finish replacement there. Upgrading for ADA in the locker rooms once more. There's an aesthetic opportunity there too, but finishes will be affected. HVAC controls were not documented, need to be added. Demolition of the ice rink equipment, roof insulation and lightweight concrete deck. As I mentioned, we've got about $130,000 placeholder there. The window system in the building is a single pane, non-thermally broken metal window system. So there's some opportunities there. Again, looking at the building efficiency overall. Construction contingency, 5 to 7% for an existing facility. 4 to 5 months construction schedule, and again, getting that with pairing that with phased construction. There's some additional cost there for a time frame of replacing the ice equipment, so we can do that in the downtime of the ice rink, as well as phasing construction so that we don't have to shut the facility down completely. All of those costs together bring us a total estimated construction cost with this additional scope of about $4.5 million. We have architectural and engineering fees right now at $416,250. The possibility of a construction manager fees could bring us to a total construction cost for the project of about $5 million. And that's the one thing I think, as Eric pointed out, we want to make sure that we're bringing a realistic project cost to the city of Brentwood. And I think it's one of the reasons we've worked with the institutions, as Eric has mentioned. I think quickly, as a summary, again, the systems are past their normal life expectancy. Let's look at and plan the replacement of these systems rather than on an emergency basis, lessen the impact and cost, work within some optimal downtime periods for the ice rink. If the systems continue to degrade, we're probably only looking at increased cost for replacement. The system replacement and code compliance offers an opportunity, again, for an upgraded aesthetic to the community center, and the opportunity to evaluate and upgrade systems and building efficiency, sustainability, and comply with current energy codes. That's kind of a quick synopsis for all that information.
Any board members have questions?
Oh.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Could you again explain that systems replacement as far as the upgrade? That's included
Yes.
in that
The majority,
price?
yes, the majority of the systems would be reflected in that, the $3.9 million.
Okay.
And then from the 3.9, there's several bullet points there for the additional scope that we
Okay.
believe is going to be necessary to complete those replacements.
Okay, and can I ask you, there's no page number, so I
Sorry.
can't tell you. Oh, no, I'm not, just so you know where to go. The GBA study level cost estimate, there's a 15 to 20% contingency there. And
Right.
then that 500,000 for 15 to 20% contingency.
Yes.
And then we have it again on the next page, 5 to 7% existing facility. Oh, I thought I saw another one.
Yeah, there's the 5% existing facility. We're putting that there. The difference between those is the 15 to 20% contingency is at the study level. Again, there's a little bit of the point A to point B. We're trying to account in there for the evaluation of system efficiency versus system cost. So we're trying to cover some of the gaps and alternatives. That's what we will look at filling. That's a number that should come down rather quickly as we get into the schematic design cost estimate. The other 5 to 7% is just having an existing building and not knowing certain conditions that we could face in that building.
So instead of putting like the 100,000 that GBA did, you do it based on an estimate?
Well, and GBA only had $100,000, and we felt they had only allocated that for really the civil scope of work. They didn't have anything in for HVAC, fire protection systems, so which are the larger number items on the budget.
Okay, great, thank you.
And that 5 to 7% construction contingency, that's where I was. A good reflection of that is the roof insulation and the roof deck. We will do test cuts. We will look and try to evaluate how much of that we think is compromised, but we really won't know until once we get into construction. Very similar to what we did for St. Louis County on their Highway District office.
Alderman Leahy.
Chris, I'm not opposed to picking up Chiodini and Associates to make this work. I have a problem with this bill in the fact that our 2014 budget only had a $3.9 million budgeted item. We're now talking potentially $5 million, and we haven't added the construction manager, which may be another $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, depending on where they come in on fees. So before we pass this bill, I'd like to know how the city's going to come up with an extra $1 million to cover the differential from what we put in the budget, because I don't know that we have an extra $1 million just floating around in capital investments.
Well, I think that decision still has to be made. Again, as we move forward, we'd have a more solid number even within a couple of months. But really, either way, none of those funds would be expended till next year, except for some initial architectural fees. And so, that would be an item that we would have to increase for next year's budget. It would be, the recommendation would be to do it as a COP like we were going to do for the 3.9 or 2.9. And just we would just need to increase that. The city could opt to spend some of the money out of capital and out of park stormwater to keep the bond level down, but those are all decisions that still have to be made. But I do think it's important to know that if we're taking this step, we need to continue to move forward on that project. The other thing that we will be able to submit, and I'm sure we would get the full amount with the park grant, that would be $375,000 that we could apply for through St. Louis County. And again, for a project of this magnitude, I'm sure that we would get that full amount. So.
May I have a second question,
Sure,
Your Honor?
absolutely.
All right. So what you're saying is we could pass this, enter it into a contract, and as long as we keep this year's budget, pick up next year's and make up the differential to work with. In the scope of work, we are hiring the Chiodini firm to look at the engineering and working all that through. I'm a little confused if they're going to do all of this and set the drawings that all of your contractors are going to work to. Where do we need the construction manager to come in? Why can't we put that into this scope of work? Since they're laying all the drawings out, I think they would have the best way of educating the contractors to make sure that the drawings are complied to, versus putting an intermediary in between.
I would leave that to the professionals to tell us whether they'd be willing to do that, which could be an extension of this contract if we enter into it. Historically, on smaller projects, we have done it that way. For instance, a library. The architect designed that and then oversaw that renovation. But we've also done it the other way. The architect designed the fire department, and then once everything was designed, the bids were ready, or the specs were drawn, we hired a construction manager that came in and actually oversaw the actual construction. As much as this is renovations to the rec center, and then I'm going to turn over to you after this, but my take, these are major renovations and need some expertise, but I'll turn it over to you, right?
I think one of the aspects that, again, as Eric reflected, that we were a little different than some of the other teams was the cost estimator to the table as part of our team. I think that's a huge aspect that a construction manager, probably the largest aspect that a construction manager can bring to a job, is cost estimating. We have a lot of experience with Steve Cooper. I've also heard one of the best answers an architect has given about a construction manager is that's also what I think you're paying us to be, and we are right down the street, and it is part of our contract.
But that part isn't in this scope of work? Or do you foresee that it is?
Well, I think in part of our normal services, it typically is. A construction manager is usually brought on as a third party to be more of an independent voice, if you will. But again, I think it's a decision that's up to the city. I think a lot of it also has to be in the determination of exactly how this project's delivered. We've talked about briefly, real quickly, priorities being established, what needs to be done first. So although it's reflected maybe as a $5 million project, the parts and pieces probably won't be that large.
I'd love it to come under budget. Thank you, Your Honor.
And along your line, just so you understand, when I saw the first estimates and immediately asked to have a meeting with Chiodini that we had last Friday, and kind of explained it, and it's understandable. One of the things with all of these studies, and again for the audience, the information, we started this in 2007. We've already spent, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, probably close to $200,000 on analysis and evaluations and surveys and all these other things to get to this point. But the costs are going up every day. The insulation on the roof may be compromised because we've waited too long. I think our park said we had, how many gallons of water in there after, well, that was rain before the last rain we had. How many was it? 9 gallons of water coming through the roof that they collected in buckets. So, we've updated our codes on HVA and heating efficiencies, which now requires us, if we're going to stay with code, we need to replace the windows. We wouldn't have had to do that a couple years ago because our windows don't meet the R factors that now we were going to make everybody else do. So, the longer we wait, the worse it's going to get. So I think the staff made a great selection in Chiodini, and I think the outcome, the other thing that we didn't really talk about before was making some improvements to the outside of the building, the landscaping, parking lot, those kinds of things that will be part of, hopefully, within the budget of this project in order, again, so the residents can see that this is a facility we're going to have for the next 25 years as well. So, so that's my take. Alderman Kramer?
Yes, Your Honor. As you may recall, I've had some concerns about this particular topic for a while. There has, I can't remember the name of the amount of committees that have actually studied this particular topic. Any number of us have been on one of those committees at a given time or not. My concern this evening begins on page 17 of the actual document that's attached to the bill. Talks about the compensation and the amount that's being charged at $416,250, and that's based upon the projected construction cost of $3.8 to $4.5 million. I guess there's a percentage. That the percentage is
that you kick in.
You've got a floating number on the construction cost, but the fixed cost to you is not changeable. So how is that? How did you arrive at that number?
No, I believe if there's a higher number, there's a percentage attached to that if it goes above and beyond that figure.
Okay, if it goes above the 4.5.
Right.
I guess, Your Honor, we've got some, first of all, the presentation is nice. And I appreciate the quality of your work and the history of your company and the dedication to your work, absolutely. Your references are top-notch. My concern is we had an initial proposal or scope or however you want to frame document that was provided to us by GBA that they aren't here or working with you to comment upon your comments. You've basically taken some revision and some commentary on their initial work. Some time has also gone by, and we're now being asked to come up with a different dollar figure that's higher, extremely higher than what I think some of us were thinking as well, which is part of the committee work that's gone along the way, going along with our comprehensive plan, going along with our recreation studies and what some of the residents have stated to us. There are some things that may or may not be included in this building that aren't really addressed by this presentation this evening, which is not really part in your bailiwick, so to speak. But I guess my challenge once again is we've got a professional presentation that we've received, digested, and been going with that for a while, knowing it might be a little bit higher, but now we have some commentary and some changes to their initial proposal. And that's a problem for me, especially when we're being asked to green light this type of funding in light of the budget that's not yet approved. So I guess in terms of the additional renovation scope that you've got proposed this evening, how firm are you on those additional renovation scope items that you've got presented for us?
No, we're very firm on those. But
Okay.
once again, we're going to have, and that's probably why I think in comparison, if I could hand out the University of Missouri Plaza 900 project budgets, even at a schematic level, we're going to be sitting down with staff, talking about priorities, with narratives and things, making some preliminary selections on specific systems. And we'll be in the building looking how you get from point A to point B, how that it could impact finishes, and again, looking at those alternatives. But it's a very detailed, nuts and bolts estimate that we'll even have at schematic level versus more of a study estimate. And we do this quite often, even with our own work. It can be either City of Ladue is a good example. We did that master plan study initially, but the stations weren't realized for 2 years later. We have to go back and update. We have to go back and revise and look at our scope once a project's becoming more concrete. Religious projects are very typical of that, where we do a master plan beforehand, an initial design, a budget associated with that we have to get approved, and then it goes for fundraising. We may not see that project again for a year or two. And even in interviewing in a lot of work that have had preliminary studies done, the very first part of our job, even with our own work, that's a study, is to reevaluate that, to vet that, to make it more real, and to challenge that study and see exactly what has changed over time. And what, it just gets more detailed. And that's what our team is here to do.
The additional renovation scope that you have proposed, is that backed up? Is that backed up by data that you've collected from?
Well, we've got that, for like the interior finishes, we're looking at about a $15 per square foot renovation cost for that. Some of that's going to play out on how the city and the staff want to remodel. Because if we're looking at ADA improvements for the locker rooms and the showers and the bathrooms there, you're really almost taking all those concrete block walls down. So what are the impacts for that? What opportunities do we have? So there's some float there, but again, we'll have to be working towards the number that we've presented tonight and weigh those options.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Saunders.
Are we actually then into the bill now, the actual bill, and not the presentation?
Well, sure, I mean, it's the same, we've had the
Okay,
first reading.
I wasn't certain. I know he asked a question. My concern is this document hasn't been tailored to us at all. It's just a standard boilerplate document, and it's very vague, the details of it. And first of all, how is the word owner defined? City of Brentwood, is that us? Everything's going to come to a vote of the board? Because everything is referenced as the owner makes these decisions. This, unfortunately, I think is a city. Everything basically reverts back to the owner throughout this contract. We start on page,
Well, the city is the owner. I mean, as going through the process, so we would have the staff, the building department, and working with them through the processes.
well, I have concerns because, like, for instance, on page 4, the architect shall present its preliminary evaluation to the owner and shall discuss with the owner alternative approaches to design and construction of the project, including the feasibility of incorporating environmentally designed approaches. The architect shall reach an understanding regarding the requirements of the project. That needs to come to us.
Well, usually that would go to Public Works.
Okay, but then there's a sentence over here that says to bypass all of the architect shall incorporate into the construction documents the design requirements of governmental authorities having jurisdiction over the project. So you'll put them in there, but it doesn't say that we'll actually be going before P&Z.
Yeah, that last section is more referencing codes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just, will we bypass P&Z? And you're saying it'll go to Public Works.
Well,
I just think that, did everyone read this?
I think what you're looking for, Alderwoman Saunders, is a little bit more detail that staff understands, because we will be meeting with them and then bringing the recommendations and the outcome of our meeting to the respective committees. So there's no intent to skip any of our legislative process.
But technically, the city doesn't, well, I guess we do. We did take the fire department to P&Z for review.
They told me you didn't.
Well,
And
maybe
I'm
they did,
concerned.
maybe
This
John
has
did. But we don't technically have to then.
I know we don't. I know we can't.
But one of the things that I think is important is what we've said all along, we said last week, is we as a city need to build it to the code. That's why we have some of these additional costs now, because of the new policies and codes that we put in place just in the last couple of years. So, it's still going to be built to code.
I know, but aesthetics are part P&Z, with the green space and so forth. I mean, I think it's always good to have an extra set of eyes, a quick pass. They may not need as much detail. But again,
I don't think
there needs to be a
agreement
distinction
where we reference the
between
committee.
when the board
Right.
decides and when staff decides in this agreement.
There hasn't been an agreement that I've seen since I've started working here where we specifically reference a committee.
Right.
I don't mean
When we
committee.
say city, it means
No.
staff will bring it to the respective committees.
Right.
No.
And the
We've
legislative body being the Board
specified.
of Aldermen.
We've specified in contracts just the same thing as I wanted specified
as
in
a
the
committee?
employee manual. No, I don't want them committee, what the Board of Aldermen approves versus staff. I mean, I don't expect us
I
to
haven't
approve
seen that.
the day-to-day or the change orders, under a certain threshold. I wouldn't anticipate that we would see that. I mean, you would never get anything done. But the major plans and stuff, I would like something in the contract that puts a stop first, that we get this. I mean, this is vague enough that it doesn't necessarily have to come to us. And we've seen where things, haven't, and it just makes me nervous. I'm thrilled with your presentation. I'm thrilled with the numbers you've given us, and I think you'll be great. I would use you as the project manager. I think, too, it didn't reference you as project manager.
I think Michael's in
The
there.
architect shall provide construction phase services exceeding the limits as additional services. When the limits below are reached, the architect shall notify the owner. Let me see. But it doesn't say necessarily that there was somewhere where it didn't say, we didn't have the contract, we just saw your presentation and you're asking $4,500,000. It looks great I'd like to spend a little more time.
Alderwoman Saunders,
not.
we did provide that information to the board. It wasn't just presented tonight.
Oh, this packet? Okay.
That-
Well, I
that
told
was
you
an
I was on
erroneous statement.
vacation, so I
We
apologize.
presented that for the past several weeks
Okay.
in the board packet.
Okay.
The weekly city administrator report.
Okay. Well,
And I think
okay,
to
I missed
maybe
that.
back up Bola's remarks, when we work with a municipality, typically we're given a contact person. That
Mm-hmm.
contact person, whether it was Eric or Bola, will work with the board, and they're the ones who guide us through the municipal process for that. And that's the specific person that may need to be determined for that contract.
Right, and you say that. You actually, in here, there's a thing that we have to designate the one person. It's in here on page 10. It says, assistance to the initial decision maker if other than the architect. No, that's the decision maker. Yeah, that's referenced. There's an initial decision maker, and it's you if we don't appoint somebody else.
That's, yeah.
And then there's also something that, the owner shall identify a representative authorized to act on the owner's behalf with respect to the project. And that makes sense to me, that we would authorize somebody. But I still feel like these decisions here, I just would like to make sure the larger decisions come before the board and that it's specified in the contract.
Larger decisions like what?
Well, when they do the drawings, the architect shall present its preliminary evaluation to the owner and shall discuss the alternative approaches to design and construction.
You want them to do the drawings of the roof and then bring us the drawings for the roof for us to approve?
Well, no, they keep saying in the contract that you're going to offer maybe alternatives. Like there might be two designs.
Sure. I mean, there may be different types of roofing material.
I don't mean individual material. I mean when you have the schematic of what it's going to look like.
That's true. If we get into the window replacement, there may be some discussion since that's or the plaza redesign or how we handle the exterior, the parking lot ADA compliance. There may be some exterior issues there that the board or the
And that would go back to Public Works.
And that, yeah, your
Normally in
representative
the
would
past.
then know that that would need to come back to staff or the Board of Aldermen to look for a presentation. But a lot of the work that's going to be done there is pretty technical.
So how is the entrance at this point in your mind that you're going to draw these two going to look?
We don't know yet. We need
We're
to
not
look
going
at
to use
the
one of the
alternatives.
schematics that we've had done in the past by GBA or
Well,
anyone else? See, I would like to see that design before we,
well,
just
then we have to
approve.
enter in a contract so we can
Right.
pay them.
That's something.
I'm
and
fine.
even-
I'm perfectly
Yeah.
fine with the contract. Absolutely. I just want it better defined what
Well,
the Board
again,
of Aldermen
the initial scope
decides.
right now isn't to redesign the entrance per se, okay? I mean, we're talking about, well, except for the ADA improvements.
Right.
So even in those improvements, it's going to be dictated by what ADA improvements you need to do. Right? And again, those decisions would go back to the Public Works Committee if there's anything outside that scope different from the ADA improvements and maybe aesthetically, what are some of the other things that we could do at that point?
Yeah, it says the architect shall submit the schematic design documents to the owner and request the owner's approval. Now, I want that to be the Board of Aldermen approving that.
Well, we would never get anywhere. It would take
Just the
forever.
overall design?
Will you yield?
Yes, I'll yield to.
My problem with your suggestion is the criteria that the Board of Aldermen would make a judgment on. We have within our own staff, building and zoning professionals that work through this. They're going to tell you whether or not Chiodini is giving you packages that comply to the current codes. I would allow the staff, who's got a much better handle on what it would look like and what needs to be done, versus, okay, let's take a look at aesthetic beauty. What constitutes acceptable? Then yes, you can get into a subjective base of decision-making. But this board, other than Mr. Robertson, really doesn't have the structural integrity to be able to say yay or nay to something. Our biggest decision right now is the city and the Board of Aldermen going to find the money to fund this project
Or do we go back to square one and try redesigning it all over again? And I don't think we want to go there. So I'll yield to the staff's expertise.
Okay, maybe I was misunderstood. I thought, and I agree, I am not a construction, I'm not an engineering, I don't want to go out and review every site, I don't understand that. I guess I was under the impression that, like, we would get maybe a couple schematic drawings of what the front of the building, like just what the finished product is going to look like, you know, and then when you get in, there's a few. But we would see what the initial, and there might be a couple choices, and that we would weigh in on that particular decision.
And we're typically directed by staff at that point if it's something that needs to come back before the board.
Okay, and and that's what I was trying to clarify, was that I wanted, and I also feel too that, you know, that needs to, we're going to spend $4.5 million and the public doesn't have any idea of what they're getting? There's no
Sure
stop
they do.
here.
We've done 2 surveys. We've done, you know, the public knows what they're getting. 90% of what we're doing are all the mechanical and things that we've been deferring for so long.
The repairs.
I mean, the residents are going to want to go in and look at the electrical panel.
No, okay.
We're bringing
if it's
it
going to
up to
look
code
the
and
same,
putting a sprinkler
okay.
system in it, you know, which we require any business to do or any property owner. You know, except for the aesthetic parts of the landscaping outside of the building, it's all deferred maintenance.
Okay.
Yes.
And Mayor, I'm learning from you. I mean, it's this first big construction contract to come before me, so I don't know all of these, so I'm just asking some questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
That's
Thank
why
you.
we did that at Public Works 3 years ago and pointed out.
Second reading, please.
Second reading, Bill number 5899 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute a professional service agreement on behalf of the city of Brentwood, Missouri with Chiodini Architects and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
You have a motion?
I move for adoption, Your Honor.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Alderman
Question,
Lady.
can, Bola, in looking at this, you're looking at 5 million. That's $1.2 million over what we projected. Chris, your thing also states that there is additional possible cost overruns in the way of expenses and stuff, so that we haven't figured in. What do we anticipate putting in 2015's budget that we cover? Let's just use the figure, and I'm throwing one wild right now, 5.5 million, so that we cover the 2 years and be able to make it. Are we going to end up having a budget that's going to be able to afford that?
Yes, we will.
Thank you, because
And keep
that's
in mind,
critical.
you're not going to spend, you're not going to pay the 5 million. You're going to do a COP, so the difference would be the bond payment for, really the 2.9 was the issuance of the bonds that then you're going to start paying in the future. So the difference is going to be between what that $3 million bond would have been opposed to the $5 million. So it may be, instead of $175,000 or whatever the number is, it's going to be, you know, $400,000.
Actually, in the budget this year, we have 3.4 million for the bond.
Yes.
So we would need, in line with their figure, maybe an additional 1.3, not including the 370,000 that we would apply through the Missouri Parks Commission. Also, staff has met with the Ameren UE, and they have indicated that some of the efficiency improvements that
Grants.
we're looking at, there are grants to help us subsidize that cost
But
as
the
well.
3.4 in this year's budget covers the interest payments for the bonds that we were going out. If I raise this from the 2.9, which got us to the 3.4, and go to 5.5, we're looking at 6.6?
No. We're hoping to keep the same bond proceeds that we had budgeted for this year, and that cost differential will be funded with cash funding from the fund balance.
Okay. So that we don't stretch our budget too much because we're going into bigger debt.
We don't intend to, and we will present this to Ways and Means.
Thank you.
Okay. We had a first and second?
Yes, you did.
Roll call.
Oh, I had one other question. Who picks the contractor?
That'll be a competitive bid process.
Okay, but does that come before us?
Similar to this, and then
Well,
we'll
it says
present-
that you'll invite them. You'll invite who you want to submit the bids for. It doesn't say competitive.
That'll be, well, it's a public project, so it'll be a public bid
It
process.
will be public
Like the roof will be
process.
bid out, right.
And that's
Sprinkler
something, yeah.
system, right.
Yeah.
And then does the contractor, Bola, come back to us, selection
Right.
of the,
We would need
with
to execute.
recommendation from
Exactly.
naturally you?
Right,
which we
The
would
board
want.
would need to execute that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Roll call.
Alderman Harper?
Yes.
Alderman Robertson?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Tui?
No.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderwoman Bannister?
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders?
Yes.
Great.
Bill number 5899 is now ordinance number 4560.
Thank you. First reading of bill number 5900.
First reading Bill Number 5900 by title only, an ordinance readopting ordinance number 3153, Section 2-471 of Chapter 2 of the Revised Code of Ordinances of the City of Brentwood for 1987, providing for the current maintenance of this code, providing for the repeal of all conflicting ordinances, and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. Synopsis, please.
Yes, Your Honor, we're talking about Bill 5900, the Personal and Financial Disclosure Policy. It readopts Ordinance Number 3153, which approved the city's personal and financial disclosure policy as required by Missouri state law. This bill is adopted annually by cities with an operating budget over $1 million and sets forth rules and policies for disclosing personal and financial information for elected officials and the city clerk administrator. Staff has checked with the Missouri Ethics Commission, and because the city has an annual budget that exceeds $1 million, only the city administrator, purchasing agent per the municipal code, is required to complete the form annually. And furthermore, according to our ordinance, elected officials are only required to complete the form if they have business transactions exceeding $500 or more with the city of Brentwood.
Okay. Alderman Saunders.
I would be fine if we have to complete the same form that BOLA does. I don't know if anyone else, it's not required, it's a higher, we set ourselves up to a higher standard by doing so.
You can go to the website and do that. Second reading.
Second reading Bill Number 5900 by title only, an ordinance readopting ordinance number 3153, Section 2-471 of Chapter 2 of the Revised Code of Ordinances of the City of Brentwood for 1987, providing for the current maintenance of this code, providing for the repeal of all conflicting ordinances, and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay. We have a motion?
Motion to perfect Bill 5900 into ordinance 4.
Second?
Second?
Thank you. We had a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Harper?
Yes.
Alderman Robertson?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Tui?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderwoman Bannister?
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders?
Yes.
Bill number 5900 is now ordinance number 4561.
First reading of bill number 5901.
First reading Bill Number 5901, an ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement between the City of Brentwood, Missouri, and MB West Contracting, and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay. Synopsis, please.
Yes, Your Honor, Bill 5901 covers asphalt projects, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Brentwood and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement between our city and NB West Contracting. That's in the amount of $175,911.44, and that covers 4 asphalt projects with the city of Brentwood.
Okay. Any questions? Second reading.
Oh, I did have a
Second
question.
reading Bill Number
I'm sorry. Alderman Saunders.
I did have a question is, what are the plans for the streets? And I brought my street inventory. People are always asking. We do have an inventory of all the streets. It was from 2011. But for instance, Park Ridge now, the block that's going to be redone is asphalt. So it goes from concrete, my block, concrete to asphalt, then back to concrete again. And St. Clair is the same thing. It's concrete from Litzinger to White, and then it was asphalted going the rest of the direction on St. Clair. And I'm wondering, are we moving, do we want all asphalt streets, or how are we making this determination as to whether to, and I just don't want that patchwork look. And I'm, like, for me, I still think that we should have considered that bond obligation that retired in 2012. It was first came about in 1992, and it was to repair the streets and sidewalks and curbs. And now it's, after 20 years, many cities go back to the residents and ask if they can just keep that money, don't increase your taxes, keep that money. They may have to increase a penny or two if, costs. But even with some of that money, if they keep it the same, then we could more rapidly repair full streets, sidewalks, curbs. And we didn't do that. So I kind of want to know, what is the direction with just doing partial streets? Are we going to eventually go to all asphalt for those streets? What's the design also, not just the aesthetic? And then like concrete curbs, asphalt curbs, because I know Alderman Kramer, mentioned that he was having the asphalt curbs redone in Brentwood Forest and back to concrete.
You're doing that?
Well, he said the city is. I'm sorry. I apologize. The city's doing that, which is great. I prefer concrete. I know it's very expensive, though.
Yeah.
But just, what's the plan?
Well, I mean, the plan historically has been, you have different subdivisions, different streets that were built at different times throughout the city. We have concrete and asphalt streets. The initial bond issue that was passed back in the 80s in order to improve those streets, I believe was an $8 million bond issue. Ultimately, before we were done with all the streets in Brentwood, I think we spent upwards of about $14 million to complete all the streets. It was the city's policy, and I want to preface this, it was our policy in 99% of the time when we had to replace a street. Right now we're doing, because we already rebuilt the streets, we're doing mills and overlays because we've already rebuilt the base, we've already put in the curbs and those kinds of things through that process that we did starting in the late 80s. If your goal is to take out an entire asphalt street and then replace it with concrete, that's a whole different construction process and probably increasing the cost by 2 or 3 times what it would be, more than that from just a mill and an overlay. So what the policy in the past had been to replace with whatever type street is there is what we replace it with. But certain times we've put asphalt over concrete streets. There was a couple years back in the 90s when actually concrete was less than asphalt because the oil prices had increased. So we did a couple streets in concrete because it was cheaper. I don't think the city wants to try to develop a policy that says we're going to go with one type of street or the other. We don't have the kind of funds to do that. What we're doing now is I don't know that we have any streets in Brentwood that are need to be rebuilt. What we did in the last project was we rebuilt a lot of streets. They took out the entire sub base and put in a new base and then new surface on the top, and now we're just doing maintenance.
Okay, and how long do those bases tend to last? I mean,
Well, if you maintain the surface, they can last for a long, long time.
A long time.
Right.
Okay, well, I don't care for the concrete. I don't want patchwork is what, I don't think aesthetically it looks good. That's just my personal preference, and I wonder if the residents feel differently, but it's up to them. I would support a bond issue for the streets and curbs and sidewalks, but that's my personal opinion.
Right. And again, it would have been difficult for us to, that would have had to go back to the voters to approve an extension of that bond. But, keep in mind, we didn't assess that under the full amount against the residents ever. The most we ever assessed against the residents through that entire process was a nickel. We could have been upwards of about 54 cents or 59 cents a couple of years on what we could assess against the residents, and we didn't do that. So if we said, if we went back to the voters for a general obligation bond, sure, we could then assess that against the residents, but historically, they didn't pay that. We paid most of that out of general revenue.
Right, and for me personally, we could have done more streets, more sidewalks, more curbs if we had not done that and used our general revenues. And I know the tax was 10 cents, so this is where the city, all of those taxes under there are definitely under our control. Because the general bond, if we can change the tax rate, it's the same for the library, the pension plan.
No,
That
this-
tax rate is under, you can change, though, the tax rate on a general bond obligation?
No, we didn't change, they're not the tax rate on the bond, the rate that we assess against the residents.
Right.
The residents approved whatever it was at the time. I don't know the amount, but the city then has the option to say, do we want to assess that 25 cents against the residents, or do we want to pay this year's out of our general revenue? So we just didn't assess it against the residents, but they had to approve it because there had to be some guarantee for payment.
Right, but I mean, they voted to pay for that. When they were approving it, they thought
Right.
they were going to pay that,
Right.
correct?
Right.
I just feel like we could have gotten.
We
a
did
lot
the same
more
thing with the
streets
rec
done.
center. We did the same thing with the park bond issue, the $1 million park bond issue that was passed in '93. We paid for that out of general revenue, right? The majority, so, okay. So where are we? Oh, second reading.
Second reading, Bill number 5901 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement between the City of Brentwood, Missouri and MB West Contracting and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay. Any other questions? Motion?
Motion to perfect Bill 5901 into ordinance form, please.
Second. Thank you. Got a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Harper.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister.
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Bill number 5901 is now ordinance number 4562.
Thank you. Next item, counts against the city.
Yes, Your Honor, we have a warrant list presented to us this evening in the amount of $233,316.26. And the good news about that is we have $55,181.75 of that, which are proposed as grant pass-through items. So I'd like to make a motion for approval of tonight's warrant list.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Any questions?
Do we have to obtain bids on the cars
We purchased them off the state contract,
so we don't obtain bids for?
so they're already discounted off of that. So when we purchase off the state contract, there are several car dealers that offer a discounted rate, so we're able to select off of that.
I thought that came before us and we made the decision whether or
No,
not to
not-
purchase.
not vehicles.
If we can take it off of the state bid, there's, it saves us the cost of putting it out to bid. They've already done that process, and we, for different things over years, we've done it for cars historically.
So what vehicle was that? I don't know which vehicle.
2015 Chevy Equinox.
For-
This
Rec
is for the
department.
recreation center that will be used to transport those who participate in our senior programs.
Oh, okay. We don't use the Magic
once.
bus. Or
Well,
is this-
in addition to that, it just depends on the number of people that sign up.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor of approving the warrant list as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Under the mayor's report, I don't have anything further except to make sure everybody marks their calendar, and we'll see you at Brentwood Days this year. Public Safety Committee, not present. Public Works,
No report, Your Honor.
Director of Planning.
The 8750 Manchester Road CID has their annual board meeting this Thursday at City Hall.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
One item that came to our attention this week, and thanks to Eric's help, we're getting it resolved or as quickly as possible, but we had a Brentwood resident that had applied for a building addition on on his daughter's home. It was actually 2 years ago, April. They went through ARB, got approval there, and then because of some issues, they ended up having to delay the project until now. they took their plans to the housing department to get their permits, and we're told that now they have to go through the entire ARB process again. Nothing in the plans had changed, and it's just because of other circumstances that they weren't able to come forward. So I've asked staff to look at and talk to ARB about maybe reviewing that process, again, giving staff the authority in a situation like this where approved ARB plans, they hadn't gotten any permits yet, but ARB plans have a longer life than a year, and be, and again, if they haven't changed from the approved plans, that they could go ahead with their permits and forward that project. So that would, again, be discussed at ARB, and if their recommendation, they'll bring something back to the board for that consideration. I just think it's difficult to, delay a resident when they're trying to make an improvement like that to their home.
So where do their current plans now sit?
Well,
have they been approved,
they
or
are
are
going to go
back
to
through?
No, they are going to go to ARB. They're going to sit on the hot seat this Thursday, which gives them ability to present their plan to the ARB again, with the hopes that they'll give it a go-ahead. Then they can proceed with applying for their permits, which takes a couple weeks. They'll go back to ARB. The notices to all the residents will go out again, and then they'll get approval on the 18th of September, is the hope. That way, hopefully, they can start construction instead of having to wait until middle of October or so. So, yeah. So that's kind of where it stands. And thanks to staff for working out and coming up with that process to move along as fast as possible. So. And the thing is, even as the Board of Aldermen, we didn't have the authority to extend that permit.
No, we do not, currently not in our code.
Right. So, so that was kind of the issue. Because that's what I want to do is actually bring it to the board tonight.
Your Honor, can we make a request for staff that under the pending new code, that we include this type of paragraph?
Well, that's what they're going to talk to ARB about.
Okay.
Yeah. I would think it would be best just to have staff's approval so that they didn't even have to bring it to a Board of Alderman meeting if no plans had changed, if there weren't any changes. But they'll discuss that and bring it back to us. Okay. So, okay. Ways and Means Committee?
Yes, Your Honor. Our timeline for budget work for 2015 fiscal year continues. We are on the timeline, and the next one up is early September, the 9th or 11th. We haven't picked that date exactly, but that's our next stop. And we are progressing towards looking at adding some more items onto the budget, it would appear, for the next year or two.
City Attorney.
No report, Your Honor.
Alderman Saunders.
I'm sorry. One thing at Ways and Means, the second week does not work for me. We moved from the third week to the second week. So can we consider the fourth week? I mean, I'll try to make the September, but, well, it's still before a Board of Aldermen meeting. There's one the 1st. So it would be Thursday, the 4th week of the month, because I know the Wednesday didn't work we changed it for Alderman Toohey. So if we could consider that, thank you.
Is that a permanent change or just
permanent change, so we can just get onto a regular schedule. Fourth
Mr.
Thursday
Chairman,
of the
the
month.
fourth week Thursday does not work for me.
Well, the other problem is we've got calendar issues in terms of who has the room and who has
Correct.
meetings. But we can talk about it at the next meeting. An excellent opportunity.
Okay. City Attorney.
Social schedules.
No report, Your Honor.
City Clerk.
No report, Your Honor.
Excise Commissioner Dunn, Library, not present. Municipal League, nothing except, again, the Missouri Municipal League Conference is coming up in September, and it will be in St. Charles. Historical Society, not present. Any unfinished business? Alderman Kramer?
Yes, Your Honor. I have an update on Brentwood Boulevard. I know it's a moving target, and all of us have been frustrated at certain points along the way. But I did a little digging after receiving some more constituent complaints, and they have named the project, and they've numbered it. This is now AR 1523, now called the Brentwood Infrastructure Project, and in the digging I found there's a surprise, which for some may be a pleasant surprise. The estimated $2.6 million total repaving begins actually this fall, with the concrete work along all the adjacent sidewalks to the project. So every sidewalk curb ramp not already ADA compliant is scheduled to be updated. Milling and paving portions of the project are set for spring, summer 2015. But the surprise is that there are 2 spans now included. Brentwood Boulevard from Eager Road to Marshall Avenue and Eager Road from I-170 to Hanley Road will also be part of the project. And they expect the life expectancy to get us out to 2025. So once again, the concrete work along the sides will be included, and that extra span along Eager Road to Hanley will be also added to the project. I did ask about the portion of Eager Road from Target or 170 back to Brentwood Boulevard, and they said that's already been done, so that will not be included.
We paid for it.
Yeah.
That's the same schedule we've been on. They were supposed to do start the curbs and sidewalk repair this summer or this year, and then asphalt next year. So that's yeah. But
I did not know about Eager Road though.
Yeah, I'm more worried about Brentwood Boulevard.
Sure.
Me too.
So, okay, great. Thank you. Alderman Lay, do you have unfinished?
Not unfinished, Your Honor.
Okay. Any new business?
Please, Your Honor.
Alderman Lay.
Well, Ward 3 meeting for the month of August is Tuesday night, the 26th at 7 p.m. up here. All are invited. If I may back up a little bit, Your Honor, to unfinished.
Sure.
I'd like to thank the police department, the National Night Out Citizens Committee, the businesses, and the residents, and the Brentwood Swim Club that helped make the National Night Out on Tuesday night, the 5th of August, possible. Those that did attend had a very good time. We did get a very good support from the businesses to help make the program work, and I thank the police officers for being available for the citizens.
New business?
New business. Madden Fest, September the 19th and 20th. It is not too late to register to get a float in the Brentwood Parade. Check with the rec center, but please grab a group, maybe just 6 of your neighbors, and come make a float.
Or a bike.
Or a bicycle. Yes. Thank you, Your Honor.
Any other new business? Alderman Sanders.
I'll keep Ward 1 posted because with Ways and Means, I have Ward 1 Tuesday, Public Works Wednesday, Ways and Means on Thursday, and it kind of gets a little bit tight. Plus, usually I have a commitment on those Thursdays of that week, so I was just hoping we could move it. So hopefully we'll work something out at the Ways and Means meeting. And the other thing is this here was the verbatim minutes reference to the Better Together. We did get the minutes and we did discuss Better Together. And my point in bringing that up was in the past, the mayor and Andy has said we have all this compensation information supplied by the Municipal League and by other cities. And so the reason I brought Better Together is it's a newer organization and they did ask cities for salary information. And although I personally have been for the compensation survey before I was on the board because you make sure you're comparing the right job responsibilities, I wanted to bring it up because I was afraid that Mayor Kelly or Alderman Leahy would use that, but Bola clarified at that meeting that it was not, at Ways and Means, that it was not comparing apples to apples. At the last meeting, though, I think, Mayor Kelly, that you said that that information's not out there, but if you go to www.bettertogetherstl.org, and if you click on their data library, it's at the top. All the cities are listed, and if you click on the cities, then it gives you a list of what they have out. And a lot of the salary information is within their organization chart, so you got to kind of click around. But anyway, that doesn't compare job responsibilities, but the information, there's a lot of other useful information on that website, so I would take a look at it.
Okay, but I mean, don't twist what I was saying, because I think what we were talking about last meeting was doing a compensation survey. And you were saying, well, the Better Together has that information. They don't have that information. They just have a list of municipalities and their personnel and their salaries. It's a lot different. And I just as a matter of record, I never said the municipal league had those numbers. What I did acquire 2 years ago was a study that Frontenac did of 6 municipalities, I believe, including themselves, of comparable size, of which Brentwood was included, and compared their salaries of their police chief, fire chief, city administrator, their benefits, how many sick days they got, and all that. We had that report, which I presented to Ways and Means in the city previously. So, but it wasn't the municipal league; it was that report that came from Frontenac. So,
Your Honor.
Alderman Saunders.
If I use the wrong word, once again, verbatim would be nice, because now I have to go back to that comment that was blurted out in the middle when I was discussing. So it would be nice if you didn't twist my words, and that too, if you would have clarified that at the meeting, I would have been like in agreement. The reason I mentioned it was because it wasn't appropriate to use it for a compensation survey, because Bullock clarified that at the Ways and Means meeting. And I'm sorry if I didn't say exactly, but in the past, you have never wanted to do a compensation study.
I still think it's a waste of money.
You have not supported that. You know, so, you know, just as you said to me, elections are coming, and it's funny how things can get reworded or semantics, and I hope that we can at least try to understand each other, though. I'm not trying to be, but I mean, I wasn't trying to misspeak about Better St. Louis, nor you last week. If you had clarified that, I would have been fine.
Well, but Alderman Saunders, you can make your clarification without saying, but you said this. And I don't care about verbatim meanings. I'm just clarifying what the meaning of the conversation from what I was taking last week, or at the last meeting. And but there seems to be a need to point out and individuals and you know, say it could have been easily said was I went back and looked and this is in Better Together and so forth, not saying, but Mayor, you said it wasn't in there. So I was just clarifying that.
Well,
because,
you blurted out in the middle of my conversation.
Oh, I didn't. Okay.
And
you've never
so
done that.
I have. No, I have.
Okay.
And I have
Thank
to
you.
go. So but I thought that it made me appear to not know what I was talking about, and that's the reason I pointed it out. Bola did not remember the conversation regarding Better Together. Alderman Kramer shook his head, he remembered, but did not volunteer any information. Andy did not remember Better Together discussion either. And
it's right here.
Yes.
No, but it
But you didn't remember it at the last meeting.
No, but the limit is that even what you're trying to bring up right now, Better Together's information was just a collection of data, but no comparison of job descriptions.
And that's,
as we stated in the meeting, it is no better than the municipal league information that we passed out on 93 different municipalities. It's just a rough estimate of ballpark ranges. But no, nobody compared work descriptions or any of that to it.
which is what I was saying.
It's what everybody else is saying. It's even said in the minutes. Nobody has presented it or represented it as anything different than that.
Well, now I will bring verbatim from the last meeting. Once again, it would be
Can I ask
helpful.
why that's so important? Why can't we just move forward instead of
Well, I
worrying
mean-
about who said what at the last
Right.
meeting?
But it's fine for Alderman Leahy to attack me on this particular thing, and at the last meeting, it was just very uncomfortable for me.
Well,
I'll just say that.
People have differences of opinions. Boards have that all the time. Just
Okay.
instead of worrying
Okay.
about it, just move forward and say you agree to disagree.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Motion
if any-
to adjourn.
Well, if
Oh,
anybody would like to
comment.
address the board, please come forward and give us your name and address.
Second.
Roll call.
I apologize for being out of line.
Louise Charbonneau, Madge Avenue. I'm sorry that the Chiadinis, the brothers Chiadinis got away. So now we're at 5 million. We first heard 2.8 and it went 3, blah, blah, blah. At the risk that we're putting a dress on a bad, we're at 5 million to fix a 35-year-old building or
40.
40-year-old building. the cost of a new building.
About 20 million.
Is it 20? Okay. If it was only 2 times, I don't know, I just thought.
That was part
But
of
the
the
expected
analysis.
life then with repairs, you're saying is 25 more?
Mhm.
And then it's going to fall down?
I don't know.
I'm just trying to amortize the 5 million over however many years we're going to get out of it. Thank you.
That all depends if MSD gets their sinkhole.
Yeah.
And that's a surprise.
Denise Stebbing, and I just want to follow up with the first comments. I took the time to bring these pictures to you this evening, the same as I did last week, and I would like someone to tell me a couple of things. I would like some closure to some of the things, so I'm not coming back in another month saying, okay, where are we? Where are we? I have more things to do in my life than do this all the time, too. This isn't my job. One question I want to know is who's responsible for the sidewalks along Manchester? We just heard this evening that there was money put aside to fix those things, but we use that money because we took it out of general assets. Maybe I misunderstood. Again, please, this is my 3 minutes. Let me speak. I've had to wait all meeting to say this, but if we have money that was put aside and we didn't use it, it'd be nice to know why we didn't use that money to fix up our infrastructure. But getting back to my point, who owns those sidewalks and who should be fixing those sidewalks up along Manchester? Secondly, we had a lot of businesses that donated to, the Night Out First Watch. Why can't we go back to some of the businesses along Manchester and, use our political savviness here and say, hey, come on, guys, we want to make this look a little bit better. Maybe we're not asking for a whole lot of money, but, sweep up the dirt on the sidewalk, sweep up the gravel that's on your driveway. That takes 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't cost anything but the cost of a broom and a dustpan. I don't think that's a lot to ask, and I don't think the city should be embarrassed to go back and ask the businesses along that corridor to try to keep their businesses a little bit cleaner. I'd like to know the status of the 2 trees that I showed you. The one is in the 9300 block of White, and the second one is in the apartment complex by St. Mary Magdalene. I specifically asked several months ago for a list of where the city is on the status of some of these trees. That was before the tree study. I was told it was going to cost $45 to get that by the city because we don't have, at that time, we didn't have a running list of citations or where we were. I think that's an example of not working smarter. If we want something to be done, we need to be tracking it. Any project manager will tell you that. So since I can't get that report without paying a lot of money, I'd like somebody on the board, maybe Keith Robertson, since you're the head of planning and development, you can give me that update of where those trees are. Have they been cited? Has somebody cited them? Are they being taken down? I mean, that's, they need to be done. Something needs to be done with those trees. Third, I would like to know who's going to get back to me on the issues on Litzinger, the weeds. We've talked about all this money, building curbs and everything. Simple weeds being removed. I mean, and bushes cut back so the walkways are accessible to children and adults to walk through there, bicyclists. I'd like somebody to take responsibility to get back to me, and I'd like to know when somebody might be able to do that. Will it be a week, 2 weeks? So I'm not calling again saying, hey, where are we on that? Frank, the tree that's in your yard, in the Davies study, they pointed out a tree that was in less severe condition as yours, and they suggested that it be taken down. And I'm not trying to pick on you, Frank, but you're the city attorney that's supposed to be responsible for enforcing codes. So I'm going to ask you, are you going to enforce or respect that? I think some of our elected officials need to lead by examples, and some of the people who work here should lead by examples. How can we expect the residents to adhere to these codes and take care of their properties if we're not going to adhere to that and we're working for the city and getting paid by the city? Finally, I'd like to know who approved the bench. There's a new bench that's in the corner of Brentwood and Hanley, and while I applaud maybe putting a bench there, there's a big sign that says, do you want to advertise here? I'm like, it's already, a trashy-looking corner, so why would you put a bench that, is in the corner, nothing aesthetically nice-looking, no plants, nothing with flowers, but a bench with a big white sign that says,
advertise here. I mean, come on, we're not, I don't know if that was approved or if somebody just threw a bench out there. I know there's one up in Maplewood too, so if it wasn't approved, I'd like to know why it, it needs to be removed.
I think we're going to use that to pay for sidewalks for
Wait a minute,
Brentwood.
location of this bench?
It's right on the corner of Manchester and Hanley on
Okay,
the,
you said Brentwood and Hanley.
I'm sorry,
and I was gonna
excuse
go-
me, I'm so sorry. I apologize.
Manchester and
Manchester and Hanley on the
Okay.
corner, right under the big billboards. There's another bench now, and there's still all kinds of weeds in the corner. It looks
Well,
trashy.
Again,
There's
that's
trash.
Maplewood, so maybe check
Well,
with Maplewood.
could somebody reach
So-
out? As the mayor, could you not reach out and just say, hey, can you
Really
put some
doesn't bother me.
flyouts? Pardon?
Doesn't bother me.
Wait a minute.
So you're just going to let it look crappy because you don't care?
No.
Fine. Are you done?
I'm finished, but I think it's deplorable that as a mayor, you wouldn't take some initiative.
Yeah, I haven't done anything.
Okay.
Only,
All right. Denise, if I may address some of your concerns. Some of the trees that you cited in the prior pictures
no, you can comment. You don't need to have a
Yeah,
discussion.
okay.
Thank you.
are not city trees, they are private ownership. The tree that you're citing this evening on Mr. Albrecht, we do not have a code that's in violation of. Davies Tree Service cites that that type of a condition is normally a health condition to the tree, and thus they may recommend to prevent further damage to work with. But the homeowner gets to decide how and what they want to do. The sidewalk on Manchester, the mayor pointed out, is owned by the state of Missouri.
I believe.
But yeah, to believe with. The money that you were referring to was money that would potentially have been there if the Manchester Road corridor was approved by the 7 municipalities. It wasn't. So that money never became available. So nobody had cash that we didn't spend. This is where, love to have the discussion, but you have to have the facts correct before we throw out allegations. If you want to bring them in, we'll work with them. Public Works will get your pictures for what you brought out tonight. They will take a look at these things, and where we can, yes, the city will take care of these problems. Some of the trimming that you're asking about is bushes on private property. The city is not allowed to do that. We can make a request of the homeowner. But again, I have no code that says you, the homeowner, are in violation. I can ask for your cooperation. The city has done that on a number of occasions. Strictly up to the homeowner to decide if it falls within what they want to do or not. Now, sightline visibility is an issue that the city can work with to go after. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah, and I would just like to point out one other thing, that, we have, my understanding, if I believe this is correct, we have over 50 miles of street in Brentwood that are the Brentwood's responsibility, not including Brentwood Boulevard and Manchester and Hanley and Eager. To go around and I guess if your goal is to criticize the city and try to embarrass the employees, and that's very easy to do from the pulpit there. But I think our Public Works does an outstanding job. I think our guys do take the initiative when they see things out of place to go ahead and take care of it. But I also will tell you, when it comes to things like that, in police work, it's even more important. But one of the best things we have are the ears and eyes of our residents. Mm-hmm. And if you saw something that was really a concern, all it takes is a phone call to city staff, and we try to get out and take care of those things. But I guess people can. I know myself can talk a little bit out of frustration sometimes, or the point of when the goal is just to try to criticize and embarrass other people, I kind of take a deaf ear to it. So that's me personally, but that's my take. So with that, I'll have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Well, wait, there's more. Please stand by.
Thank you. I would just like to remind you and the board members that as the election process comes forward, in the past you have received quotes and regulations from the FCC We are regulated in the sense with our city government channel for carriage on the Charter cable system and AT&T UVerse. This doesn't necessarily affect the YouTube videos, but as we approach the election dates, I would caution you to contain your rhetoric to things not aimed at influencing the election process. And Bola, if you would please send out that letter again, I would appreciate it. If not, if you don't have it, I will give it to you. But some of this evening's rhetoric has come dangerously close to perhaps costing us our franchise. Thank you.
Okay.
I disagree with that. Simply said, reminded that elections are coming up. You can say the word election and you can remind people when elections are coming up. I know that because I was here when you made that statement when I had to run last time.
I don't think Kevin was making...
Nothing's even opened yet for filing.
But Kevin didn't point out any names. It could have been me. So, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And second. We are all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.